and Carolina, we were staying at the home of Kalashuddha and Advaita Chandra. And Kalashuddha informed us that many people come to the Hare Krishna movement from other sampradayas, from other movements. Many devotees who've taken to Krishna consciousness have, not many, but some have come from the Sri Sampradaya. And in the Sri Sampradaya, they don't take vows of chanting the Mahamantra, but they chant other mantras, and they focus a lot on puja. And so she informed us that members of the Sri Sampradaya have wanted to take initiation into the Gaudiya Sampradaya, which is the Sampradaya we are in. And she said that their spiritual masters approved, because in the Gaudiya Sampradaya it's a different process. Not that they would stop what they were doing with their Sri initiation, but it's initiation into the chanting of the holy name, so that even though they were initiated in that Sampradaya, they were also taking initiation within the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, which I wasn't aware of, but it makes sense because in that Sampradaya they're not getting the holy name. It's not a Harinam Diksha initiation. And then of course she said, which we all know, that many devotees in India are initiated when they're young by a family priest who is not a Vaishnava, and so they also take initiation. And of course, if one wants to take initiation within the Vaishnava Sampradaya, and one has taken initiation from a guru who is not a Vaishnava, then naturally one would take initiation from a Vaishnava guru. But I didn't know that those of the Sri Sampradaya were also getting initiated within the Gaudiya Sampradaya. But in retrospect, in thinking of it, it does make sense, because here in Gaudiya Vaishnavism they're getting the holy name and getting guidance in chanting the holy name and guidance in Mahaprabhu's movement. So that was interesting and also helpful for Timothy and Carolina and all of your friends all over Mexico and maybe elsewhere. So I'm going to go back to what we were reading. We were reading from the Nectar Devotion, and of course if you have any questions, just ask. We were reading from the Nectar Devotion. One thing, I don't know how the lighting's going to work because it's still light out here outside. And we have some lights on inside, it could get dark, so if I go into the dark, I go into the dark. What can be done? So, we read, and this is what we were reading when we left off several weeks ago. He mentions, this is Rupa Goswami, he mentions the basic principles as follows. 1, accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master. 2, becoming initiated by the spiritual master and learning how to discharge devotional service from him. 3, obeying the orders of the spiritual master with faith and devotion, following in the footsteps of great acharyas, teachers, under the direction of the spiritual master. And the last one, number 5, inquiring from the spiritual master how to advance in Krishna consciousness. So, I had an interesting experience the last few weeks. We went to London, and I stayed at the home of 2 Siksha disciples, not initiated, and qualified to be initiated, but their parents don't want them to get initiated until they get married. They feel it's a big commitment, a big responsibility. Although, we feel they're ready. And so, they were concerned because they want to be connected to the disciplic succession, connected to their spiritual master. And I quoted what Prabhupada had said when he first met his spiritual master. He said that when I first met him, I accepted him in my heart as my spiritual master. And I don't know if you know, but Prabhupada didn't accept initiation for 11 years. But he said that was the real initiation, or the real acceptance. So here, there are 5 principles, and only one is initiation. And the second one Prabhupada gives is becoming initiated and learning how to discharge devotional service. So, when you become a Siksha disciple, or you take shelter of a guru or a senior devotee, you learn how to discharge devotional service. And that's really the real essence of initiation, is the Siksha, or the instruction. And the initiation is a connection and a motivation to go forward, but the real thing is the Siksha, or the instruction. And so I was telling these devotees that more important than the diksha, which is formalizing the connection, is the actual connection. We talked about that last time. What are you formalizing? It has to be something there to formalize. But just relating to you my experience from the position of a spiritual master, and how I experience the relationship with disciples, that the initiation it's not the real thing. But of course, the spiritual master is accepting the disciple, and the disciple is accepting the spiritual master, but actually that's already happened. So now it's formalizing. So that was just my experience, that in being with them and then doing this initiation, that the real thing is not the initiation, but the real thing is what goes on in the heart. And over again I've seen in my life as a devotee, I've observed this very clearly, that the disciple who's dedicated to a spiritual master always does well in Krishna consciousness, and it doesn't really depend so much on the level or who the spiritual master is, but it really depends on the attitude of the disciple. Of course, you can say that the disciple may not have the right attitude unless he has faith in the spiritual master, so the choice of who his spiritual master should be is important. And I'm not saying it isn't. I don't want to minimize that. But I'm saying that when the choice is made, there is so much that comes from the heart of the disciple in surrender and service to the spiritual master that forms the basis of their spiritual life, their spiritual advancement in the future. Now, if you go to the third one, obeying the orders of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. So these are very similar, accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of the spiritual master. Well, Prabhupada was asked, what does it mean, taking shelter of the feet? Well, we say, I bow down to your feet, or in the dust of your feet. And Prabhupada said that means the instructions. Taking shelter of the instructions, which means, of course, following the instructions. So the second one, becoming initiated and learning how to discharge devotional service. Becoming initiated technically means now you will give yourself to the guidance of the spiritual master. That's really what it means. So if you've already given yourself to the guidance, even if you're not officially initiated, you're really fulfilling number 2, because you're learning how to discharge devotional service. And Prabhupada defined initiation. He said, now I give myself to the spiritual master, and I agree to be trained by him under his direction, not to be independent. So that's what number 2 means. I'm not independent. Just like there's so many instructions that Srila Prabhupada gives us, and a lot of these instructions, not a lot, but some may be instructions we're not inclined to follow. We don't naturally want to follow them. Our conditioning, our upbringing goes against the grain of those instructions, but because the instructions are there, we follow them. So that means we're giving up our independence to act any way we feel like. So that's what Prabhupada means. You don't want to do it, but you do it because your spiritual master ordered it. Or Srila Prabhupada has asked us to do it. So you're giving up, so initiation, technically in that sense, means you're giving up independence. I'll be guided by the teachings of my spiritual master. But the point I'm making is once you accept the spiritual master, you're already doing that. So that's number 2. And learning how to discharge devotional service means learning sadhana. And that's what sadhana is. It's following rules and regulations. Whether you follow them spontaneously or not, sadhana is the practice of those rules and regulations. So again, under the guidance of the spiritual master, hear the instructions, and then you follow them. That's called bhajana kriya. It's a third level of the practice of devotional service. It begins with faith, then there's association of devotees. Stage 2, stage 3 is then you take to the practice. So anyone who's practicing regulated devotional service, especially those chanting 16 rounds, following the regulative principles, rising early, studying, doing service like that, they're doing bhajana kriya. So in that sense, there's not a whole lot, if they've accepted guidance of a spiritual master, there's not a whole lot of difference between their situation before and after initiation. But then when it's officially connected, this residual karma is burned up when they take initiation, and impetus to go further is given. But it doesn't mean they'll go further. They can revert and go backwards. But because they've taken that connection with the Guru, eventually they'll succeed. So, let's continue. Number 3, obeying the orders of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. Same thing. The next, number 4 is different. Number 4 and 5 are slightly different. Number 4 is very interesting. Following in the footsteps of great acharyas, teachers, under the direction of the spiritual master. So, here we're seeing a disciplic line. Is that you have your guru, and your guru is directing you to previous acharyas, great acharyas. Like in the Sri Sampradaya, the acharya of the Sri Sampradaya, the main acharya, is Ramanuja acharya. And so, when you take initiation in the Sri Sampradaya, your teacher will give you the teachings of Ramanuja, and he'll guide you. And so, under his order, you're guided to understand those teachings. So he's connecting you. And that's what this is being said here. Following in the footsteps of great acharyas. How do you know what the great acharyas taught? For your guru shows you what they taught. Your guru helps you understand their mood, the deeper meanings of what they taught. So you're learning to connect with these great lighthouses of spiritual knowledge, these great Mahabhagavats, through your guru. So in ISKCON, you have your guru, and your guru is representing Srila Prabhupada, who's the founder acharya of ISKCON. And founder acharya means that everything we learn comes through Srila Prabhupada, and if we study the books and works of other acharyas, then we compare that with the light of what Prabhupada taught. Everything must line up. And then what Prabhupada stresses, we learn what he gave importance to, because sometimes reading Shastra, it's not clear. There's so many principles, but then we learn what did Prabhupada give stress to, what did he not stress so much. His inner mood, what was his thoughts. This we learn from our spiritual masters. So we're all connecting to Srila Prabhupada, and we do it through our spiritual master. And practically speaking, that particularly if your spiritual master is a disciple of Prabhupada, then it's a great advantage for you, because you have a spiritual master who was there during Prabhupada's time and knows him well, knows his mood, and can help you better understand what Srila Prabhupada taught. And it's interesting in our line that sometimes an acharya like Rupa Goswami would write a book, and then sometimes he himself would write a commentary on his own book, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if that happens today. Here's the book, but then the book could be difficult to understand, or all of it could be difficult to understand, and so then he writes a commentary, a sequel, so to speak. Or sometimes another acharya will write a commentary on that book. So that happens also. So
Prabhupada,
we are, in a sense, everything we write are commentaries on what Prabhupada taught us. We're expanding upon what he taught.
I just turned 20.
So those who understand best what he taught can explain it best. So it doesn't mean we don't have direct access to Prabhupada, that we have to go through our spiritual master. No, Prabhupada gave us his books, and all his audio is available. But at the same time, we understand that the spiritual master, his service is to clarify. He's representing Prabhupada.
Feel that you don't have qualification, you'll
following in the footsteps of great acharyas, we can say here, following in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada, under the direction of the spiritual master. You're under the direction of your spiritual master. And number 5, inquiring from the spiritual master how to advance in Krishna consciousness. So this is...
Krishna, please help me.
This is interesting, because...
So he said that way... That's how you become Krishna
one time,
you always get guidance and help.
Devotee asked Prabhupada, he said, well, in Shastra it says we should inquire from the spiritual master, Bhagavad Gita, Tad Vidi Pranipasena.
So I've employed that instruction many
times. You should surrender, and then you should inquire, and you should do service. So these 3 things, they go together. Don't just inquire without service, without surrender. And so they asked Prabhupada, well, how do we do that? Because we're not always with you. And Prabhupada said that through my books, by reading my books, you're inquiring. But whether you're inquiring through the books, whether you're inquiring through another devotee in a class, whether you're inquiring through your spiritual master or a senior Vaishnava, the process of inquiry is fundamental to the connection with spiritual master, because if there's no inquiry, it means then one may not be desiring of advancement because one's not questioning how to progress further. So inquiry is meant to clarify the knowledge, clarify the practice, because as we clarify it, then we can perfect it, or slowly perfect it, or you have a goal, you want to go here. So you want to know how to get there. So you're asking questions, how do we get there? And if anybody ever asked Prabhupada a question which didn't show that that was their intent, sometimes Prabhupada would ask, why are you asking that question? Sometimes he wouldn't answer it, or sometimes he would answer another question. In other words, the question they should have asked. And of course, people thought he didn't understand the question, but the truth was they didn't understand what question to ask, so Prabhupada was giving an answer to the question they should have asked. So, in other words, it's not that you question the Guru just for the sake of curiosity, for the sake of accumulating knowledge, but the basis is so you can go further in Krishna consciousness. Now, if you don't have a spiritual master, of course, anyone who comes to ISKCON has a spiritual master because they have Srila Prabhupada. But if you haven't found a spiritual master, or you're just a soul lost in the world, you're not even connected with any spiritual movement, how do you find a spiritual master? And the same thing is there, that the sincerity to understand the truth and the sincerity to perfect oneself, that's the requirement. And a lot of times you meet people, and people are on different levels of spiritual advancement, and you're trying to help them. But you understand that some people are more ready than others, and some you give a lot of energy to help, but they don't go far. And other people, just a little bit, they go very far, because they're at a stage in their life, or their spiritual progress in this life, they're at a stage where they're just ready. So everything you say is like putting a match in dry grass. And so Krishna then, he brings those people to a spiritual master because they need it, because they want it. And so then when you connect with the spiritual master, he takes charge of your life. It's like a contract that he agrees to take you back to Godhead. And you have a contract and you agree to serve him. So that's a reciprocation of Krishna to the sincere person. And we also understand, because the spiritual master is a via media, so Krishna is sending himself to a disciple, to a devotee, he's sending himself in the form of the spiritual master. And so whenever we see people that are misguided grossly or slightly, or having difficulty, or they've gone through different spiritual masters, it's only because of where they're at. And so Krishna's just reciprocating with their lack of intensity to find the truth. Maybe they're not ready for it. And so Krishna says, you're not ready, I won't give it to you. Or I'll give you somebody that you're ready for it, which may be someone who has a little bit of knowledge, and or it may be someone who can't give you knowledge, but you believe he's giving you knowledge, but he isn't. So, because you're not ready for it, or that's all you want. A lot of gurus came to America during Prabhupada's time, and they were giving something, but they weren't giving everything, or maybe they didn't even have everything to give, or maybe they had it, but they thought people weren't ready for it. And so what we saw is a lot of people, not a lot, but some people would come to these gurus and follow their processes. At a certain point, they'd say, "Is there more? Is there more?" And actually, an interesting thing happened. I don't know if everybody knows, but there were people coming to Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and they asked that question: "Is there more? Can you give us more?" And he said, "Well, if you want more, then go to Bhaktivedanta Swami. He's giving the highest thing." And so some people went. So you see, it's a natural process. If you don't, like people ask us, why did you become a devotee? Well, the real internal esoteric reason is because if someone's sincerely looking for the truth, the absolute truth, the ultimate truth, then eventually they're going to evolve through different religious systems to the point of pure devotional service, because that's the ultimate truth. So that's the real answer. Why did you become Krishna conscious? Because there wasn't pure devotional service anywhere else, and I wanted it, and so I found it. So the people who stay with gurus who are not giving them pure devotional service, generally they don't want it, and if they do, they'll inquire, how can I go further? And so that's one example of it. So in that sense, finding a guru is more about becoming sincere in understanding the absolute truth, and then Krishna will direct you to a guru, or the guru will find you. And inherent within that is that when you get the truth, you're willing to accept it and surrender to it. So in that verse, Krishna is saying, you don't just inquire, but you serve and you surrender, because the idea is that the guru gives you knowledge. If you're not surrendered, you can't take advantage of it. And so a lot of people get knowledge, but they can't take advantage of it because they don't really want to surrender. They're too attached. And so when you come to a guru, you have to be maybe not totally free from attachment, but willing to be free from attachment. Otherwise, you're going to limit the amount of the benefit you're going to get. So, tadvidi pranipatena, surrender. And surrender means, okay, I'm yours, now you guide me. I've given up my independence. Pariprashnena, inquire, and then do service. So you tell me what to do, and I'll do it. Just like Arjuna. And he comes to this point where he's confused. And then he says, I surrender, just tell me what to do. I don't know what to do. And so he's just playing the role of everybody. Everyone's in that situation, but not everyone's going to admit that. And I was just thinking today, it's very interesting that practically if you think of anyone who's become a devotee, and especially seriously engaged in devotional service, you'll find that there were things in their life that just weren't working out, and at that point they hit a threshold where they wanted to know, what's the answer? Why is this going on? And it just pushed them a little over that threshold, and that's when they became devotees. And I was just going in my mind through this person, this crisis. They had this crisis, and that brought them to Krishna consciousness. And this person had this trouble, and that brought them to Krishna consciousness. Because people come, they write me, or they talk to me, they Skype me with problems. And a lot of the people who I've helped got more into Krishna consciousness because of those problems. So it's very, very interesting. And so, the problem brings you to this point and say, now I'm ready. And you see that in Bhagavad Gita, because Arjuna wasn't ready. And he didn't want to fight, but his anxiety levels got so intense that he couldn't resolve the problem himself. So it's that anxiety, that frustration, the problems we have, it brings a person to say, okay, now, saritam mam papanam, I'm ready to become your disciple and surrender unto you. So that's what it means to be a disciple. Okay, all right. And then in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says that, Krishna and Arjuna are friends, but at that point, he didn't know what to do, and he told Krishna what he wanted to do, which was to leave the battle. And Krishna said, for different reasons, that's not going to work. This is not your nature. Plus, look at you right now, you're a mess. So we have to resolve this fact that you're not thinking properly. And so, comes to this point where he says, okay, now I'm surrendered. I'll do whatever you say. So then Prabhupada said, that's the point where one takes a guru, because now he said Krishna and Arjuna are friends, but now the talks get serious, because Arjuna is surrendering. So that's what it means. When you say surrender, well, you're surrendering through a person, and the person's guiding you. And I've seen, as I was saying before, I've seen how well devotees do when they have that attitude of surrender to their guru. It's just, this is what my guru wants. And they give up their selfishness. They give up attachments. They're able to do things they don't want to do. They're able to do things, to give up things that they like. It's just amazing, and how much power comes from that surrender to the instruction of the guru. And how much mercy that they get from the guru for doing that. And this way, so much advancement is being made. one time in our movement, the devotee had a dream, and in the dream, Prabhupada was speaking to all the previous acharyas, and he was giving them a report of his preaching, and he was saying, these people, they're not, they're very fallen, they're not very spiritual. It's very difficult for them, he said, but they have one quality, and the one quality is they'll do whatever I say. They have this faith in me. And this surrender. And the devotee went to Prabhupada and said, I had this dream, is it true? And Prabhupada said, yes. So, it's through that faith in the Guru, a person who's living, who can serve, and the faith in the great Acharya, in his instructions, and other Acharyas, that gives this kind of empowerment that otherwise we wouldn't have, or otherwise it would take us years or lifetimes to become advanced. And advancement doesn't just mean purity. Advancement means love and devotion. And that love and devotion is initially, it manifests with Guru and disciple. So I'm going to go back. I'm not actually on the website. I'm going to go see if you have any questions. Okay. Prabhupada answers. Okay, where are we? The freedom of the four regular principles gives us freedom to live in Krishna consciousness, not die in the mode of ignorance. Shastras being constantly revealed. No inquiry equals no answers. Well, that had absolutely nothing to do with what I was saying. But anyway, maybe nothing to do. So we're good. I can keep going. No. I can keep going, right? I guess it has something to do with what I'm saying. Oh yeah, it does. Because Rodrigo was saying, if you don't inquire, then you don't get any answers. Yeah, so that's good. So, yeah. And Shastra is being revealed by the sadhu. Yeah. Because Shastra is conversations of sadhus, and Shastra is being, through the acharyas, revealing the meaning of the Shastra. So, the sadhus, we say Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. So when we say sadhu, sadhu is Guru, all the teachers, and dharmasya tattam vihitam guhaya. The truth of dharma is hidden within the heart of the sadhus. That you can't really understand Shastra without the sadhu. So the Shastra is passive, but when the sadhus explain it, it becomes alive, active, and it's important because it's easy to misunderstand Shastra, definitely. And so the sadhus are there to edify, to bring out deeper realizations. Prabhupada once said, without his purports, you wouldn't understand the Gita. So, okay. I'm going to go back reading, if there's no question, because I'm reading from something. Something else that I've realized, and that even amongst God brothers and God sisters, we have senior God brothers, we have senior God sisters who are more advanced, wiser, more learned, and so they also act as a kind of Siksha Guru. Because you see, in the beginning of our movement, Prabhupada always entrusted his older disciples with the task of educating and taking care of the younger disciples. And we're only talking a few years older. But that process of them kind of taking an unofficial position of a guru was there in the very beginning, and the practice of accepting authority, giving respect to authority, giving respect to senior devotees, to leaders within the organization who held positions, temple presidents, GBC, like that. It was Prabhupada very strongly instilled that system. So the idea is wherever you can get Krishna consciousness, whoever has realization that can uplift you, whoever has understanding that can help you go further in your bhakti, then you accept that. So when we talk about association of devotees, that it's all intricately wound up in this concept of Siksha. Now, it doesn't mean one's god brother may not be the one you take shelter of and say, just surrender like your guru. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that you avoid the person and say, well, he's just a god brother. What does he have to give me? But you can recognize certain god brothers are very advanced and they can give you a lot. And we've seen that within our organization, that some of the very, very advanced devotees have become shelter for many of their god brothers just because of their knowledge, their realization, their intelligence. So that's part of the process. And I've spoken in the past about another principle which I believe is extremely important, and I emphasize this as much as possible, which is getting guidance from a person who wants to give you guidance and take care of you. So we have, seeing now in ISKCON, we have counselor systems in some places, or mentor systems, where a senior devotee sort of takes responsibility for the spiritual advancement of a junior devotee, which is exactly what a spiritual master does. So it's done in an official way, because there's a formal relationship that I'll be your coach, your mentor, your counselor. And so all your problems, all your difficulties, you'll come to me, and through different stages of life will help guide you. So it's very important and very, very beneficial, because then you're not traversing the material terrain on your own. And that's the principle of Guru, that there's this guide who can put you on the path and see you forward. And we have an independent nature, so we don't always think we need that. And the other end of it is that somebody is new in Krishna consciousness, and they don't feel qualified for it, because usually you get Guru when you want to take initiation. And as I've been saying over and over again, that's a huge mistake. But you always should take shelter of senior devotees. You can have a Guru even if you're not qualified, because the Guru is helping you, and gradually, as you develop a relationship, then he or she can help you more and more. And as the affection grows because of the relationship, you find it becomes easier to surrender, because you're surrendering to a person. You're not, like people say, well, how can I surrender to Krishna? I've never seen him, and it's so far off, and it's not personal. But here's a spiritual master, here's a person you can work with, who you can satisfy. So it's a very important and powerful principle of Krishna consciousness that everyone, even those who are not so qualified, should take advantage of. And when you do that, you see it's much different. Otherwise, it's kind of like you are on your own and you're advancing at your own pace. That's okay. But under the guidance of a spiritual master, he can help you go much further, much faster. Then, of course, some people don't do that because they're just not on that stage. They're not ready for it. They're not that serious. They don't want it. They want to be independent. So that's understandable. We're not ready for that, but we should be ready for it. That's the point. That's the demarcation point, where now I'm going to be guided. I'm willing to give up independence to be guided by somebody who can guide me better than I can guide myself, because otherwise I'm guiding myself by my mind. Right? So, that's something I've been emphasizing a lot. And you get people who don't chant 16 rounds, so they don't look for a guru. They don't feel qualified to take Diksha. They don't look for a guru. They haven't found anybody they can see as Diksha guru, so they don't. They see Prabhupada as their guru, and they fear that anyone else would get in the way. They think maybe no one in ISKCON is qualified. Their guru fell down, they can't put their faith in another guru, or they don't feel they can be a good disciple. So this is a list I made up, and I feel that none of these are valid. I mean, in a relative sense, they may be valid, but, they're not valid. That's my point. They may seem to be valid, but they're not, because we all need that. We all need guidance. That they can, and even if you feel you're not ready to surrender, but that's not the point. You take the guidance You develop the relationship. Service to advanced devotees. It's very powerful. It's there in the Bhagavatam. Serving advanced devotees. You get their blessings, you get their mercy. It's almost mystical. I've seen, and then you have the opposite. All throughout our scripture, you have the opposite. You offend a devotee, and it destroys your bhakti. So you put these two things together, and you serve the Vaishnava, you get his mercy, you please Krishna by serving him, you get Krishna's mercy. You offend a Vaishnava, then you offend Krishna. You don't get the Vaishnava's mercy, you don't get Krishna's mercy. I mean, it's very simple when you actually look at it that way. And Krishna, I don't know if I told you before, but I had this interesting experience that, this may sound like I'm being proud, I'm just stating an observation, that I've seen any time someone has treated me badly, it's become a problem for them, even when I was a young devotee. And not that I was anything special, but I understood from that Krishna just didn't like it. He's just not pleased when devotees are not treated well. When people are very unnecessarily upset with me, or angry, or whatever, or just nasty, or not people. I'm talking about devotees, and I've seen how it hurt them, their spiritual life. And I was thinking, why should that hurt them? I'm hardly a devotee. I'm just struggling. But then I understood that, as I saw this again and again and again, and how bad it was for them to do that. Then I began to understand it's not a matter of how advanced we are, but it's a matter of that if we serve the devotees, Krishna's pleased. And if Krishna's pleased, that's it. You're good. What else do you need? Right? So that was the idea. I mean, not the idea, that's the philosophy, but I've seen that over the years more and more. Even a very young devotee, if we upset in some way, we disturb in some way, we criticize in some way, it affects us, and it negatively affects us. Krishna's not pleased. And even just serving a young devotee, doing some service, some appreciation of the devotee, Krishna's pleased. And bhakti is all about pleasing Krishna. It's interesting that one devotee told me they were having an issue with forgiveness, and they went to Bhakti Vidyapurna Swami, and his basic answer was, Krishna is pleased if you forgive, so you should want to do it. So that's such a simple principle of bhakti, that if it pleases Krishna, you just do, that's it, right? You just do it. So serving the devotee pleases Krishna. It's quite simple. It's not, it's not really esoteric. It's just very simple. Krishna's pleased when you serve his devotee, and Krishna ordains a system where you have a spiritual master and you serve him. You work under his guidance and you please him, and that pleases Krishna. And it doesn't matter your spiritual master is Mahabhagavad or not. He descended from the spiritual world or not. That doesn't matter. But the system is you please this person. And of course, then the question always comes, but really, does somebody have to be there? I mean, how do I become closer to God if somebody's in the way between me and God? But that person's not in the way. That person is leading the way. So people misunderstand it. Like, I have this connection with God. You do. With Krishna, you have a connection. But this person is helping you in that connection. That's the point. So, any questions on that? Or should I continue to read? I actually go over this list and explain what's wrong with it. But before I do, I want to see if anyone has any questions to keep me awake. Pallavi, is anybody on Krishna.com with questions? She doesn't know. You do know? You don't know? Okay. I'll give you a minute. 59, 58, no. Okay, no one. They're all absent. They're all hiding somewhere. Or nobody's there. We lost everybody. If I don't do a class for a couple of Tuesdays, everybody forgets. It's amazing. It's a Shakti that they have. They just forget. Another thing that I see is that when a person is interested in advancing in Krishna consciousness, you see as their sincerity goes up, as their intention to become purified goes up. You can see this right in people from the very beginning. Their inquiries go up. They're always asking, how. That's the guru-disciple relationship. How do I go further? How do I go further? How do I go? And we all need to be asking, and we all need that guidance. So when you're not asking, it's like, okay, what's wrong here? Why am I not asking? We should always be asking. And I remember once Prabhupada was in Mauritius, and the Mauritians asked a lot of questions, and he really liked it. Because the questions were good, they were intelligent, and so he really appreciated that. And so Prabhupada has written in the Bhagavatam, he said that when the disciple is asking so many wonderful questions, the spiritual master becomes enlivened by the question and by the sincerity of the disciple. And often it's the sincerity of the disciple to advance that brings the knowledge out of the spiritual master, because the spiritual master is transparent via media, and the disciple is inquiring and showing their need in terms of what they require to advance further, what understandings they require. So it extracts it out of the spiritual master, and sometimes the spiritual master will say things that he himself never said before, because the disciple is pulling it out of him. Which is a very interesting relationship. And so spiritual master or any preacher, Krishna is using them to reciprocate with the sincerity of the person who's inquiring, to fulfill the needs of that person. Because they want it. They have a necessity to advance further. And so it extracts more and more realization and knowledge from the spiritual master. So that's how the relationship goes. And it's like churning the ocean of nectar. And so what we see also is that when the audience is eager to hear, then it will extract so much from the teacher. So many more realizations will come, so much more nectar will come than would come from an audience which is not so eager. And that's this word eagerness. It's there in many places in Shastra, but it's in one place it's there in terms of hearing. Eager to hear. And Prabhupada, he tells how when he was young, a man, and he was several times with Bhaktisiddhanta. And so there's one story when they were doing parikrama and they were with Bhaktisiddhanta, and the announcement was that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta tonight will be giving darshan or giving class, and tonight we're also going to such and such temple. And Prabhupada thought, if I go to such and such temple, what will I see? I'll just see with my naked eye. I won't really see the deity. I'd rather hear from my spiritual master. It's a special opportunity. So Prabhupada said that he always would hear from a spiritual master. That was always his first choice. And he said that Bhaktisiddhanta said, when Prabhupada was finally recommended for initiation, and Bhaktisiddhanta said, yes, he is qualified, I've noted. He likes to hear, he doesn't go away. So that was, that's a real qualification, eagerness to hear, because eagerness to hear means you're eager to advance. Otherwise, what are you hearing about? You're hearing how to advance, becoming purified. So eagerness to hear is, I'm sitting on the floor here. I keep moving around, but what can we do? Now I have to move the camera up. a bit because I moved up. Yeah, so eagerness to hear is fantastic. It's a good sign. And then as the devotee advances, becomes more eager to hear, more eager to inquire. And you think, well, if I'm advanced, why would I inquire? No, you inquire more. Because there's always more to learn, more to understand. And that's the process. And you inquire from a person who's qualified. All right, now we're going to go back and see if you have anything. So let's see. Okay. It's just me there. Oh, nobody in Krishna.com. I think they logged on here. Okay. Humble pranams to you also, Krishna Kirtan. I like this because serving my spiritual master makes my spiritual life seem real and not something artificial. Yeah, it's very special. See, Prabhupada had a mission, and so he came, and basically he said, I'm giving you the mission of my spiritual master. And it's your mission, it's my mission. You're my disciples, I give you that mission. And then the disciples of Prabhupada, they give their disciples that mission. And it's real. It's very real, and it's very. It's really the basis. It's so important, so you can't minimize it. And devotees who had, could intimately serve Prabhupada or intimately serve their spiritual master. It's very special. I mean, of course, we're all serving Prabhupada, and directly or indirectly, we're all serving our spiritual master. But if there's opportunity to serve directly, that's very special. It's very satisfying. Marina is also watching on Chatsi. Yes, good. I'm watching listening, or whatever, on Chatsi, So, and, the other thing is that Krishna is easily pleased by pleasing his devotee. So he really makes it easy for us. And then the other thing is that the path is drawn out, because the spiritual master draws it out, so you don't have to speculate. And Bhagavatam says when you please the spiritual master, then the result is it results in an affinity for hearing about Krishna. And it results in blessings. And when you get blessings, what happens is you make much more advancement than you could ever make on your own. So in a sense, you could say you're serving to get blessings, and then by those blessings, it's like a rocket ship. You're transgressing the gravitational pull of Maya by the blessings of the Vaishnavas, blessings of the spiritual master, through pleasing them. And even if they are not giving their direct blessings, by pleasing them, Krishna automatically arranges for those blessings. And then when the blessings are there, everything's successful. Then that's perfect. You don't have to worry when you have the blessings. So, we have some more katha here. I haven't been initiated yet. I'm diabetic, type 1, and I want to live in a temple. Take shelter of spiritual master. I have several illnesses, as a matter of fact. Don't know how I would be able to manage my medical needs and beyond. You'd have to... I think the first thing you'd want to do is, get yourself up to being able to chant 64 rounds a day. Not 64, I'm sorry, 16, and following the principles. Another option is live near a temple, if you can't live in it because of your needs. Live close, across the street, on the street, down the street. Another option is go to India and do the nature cure, because many people who are diabetic have done a nature cure and cured their diabetes through natural diet and things like amla juice and other fasting on fruits and so forth. So that may also, there may be things you could do which would be beneficial for your health, which would make a huge difference. Because if you're stronger, then maybe you could actually manage. But if you can't manage to live in it, live close to it, and get service. Service is very important. Of course, you can have service anywhere, but Rodrigo Bonafante Neophyte. If you want to get initiated, the first thing is connect with someone who can guide you in your spiritual life. And then, if that works, then you develop a relationship, and then he helps you come to the point where you can be initiated. So, some people think it's kind of the other way around. You become qualified to be initiated, then you find a guru. But often, it's finding the guru who's going to help you become qualified. So you can, as I'm saying before, you can, at any stage, you should be with him. And the fortune of having Prabhupada's disciples to guide you is it's basically not different than having Prabhupada. I don't think Prabhupada saw it as different or felt it was any different. It's the same knowledge, and they've heard it from him, and our process had from the very beginning as Prabhupada taught us, and we repeated what he said. Pallavi says, and on the bright side, even if you are a bit far from the temple, you'll always hanker to go. Yeah, there's a funny story. I have to move around a bit here. Excuse me for wiggling around. There's a funny story. A devotee wanted to live near a temple, and her guru said, "Better you don't live near the temple." She said, "Why?" He said, "Because..." Exactly what Pallavi said. He said, if you don't live near the temple... Oh, look at that, and put it out of focus. Oh my God. If you don't live near the temple, you'll always be thinking of the temple. Marina Mataji, what does it mean when the Guru takes years to initiate a devotee? Ha ha. Well, that's difficult to answer because I don't know who your Guru is. Because some Gurus do it very quickly. They encourage people, right, and they give it very quickly, and some gurus don't. And I can tell you the two reasons I think they don't. One, they have too many disciples, and they don't want to initiate so many at a time, so they can't handle all this karmic reaction, so they wait. Maybe they've had many disciples that have fallen down, so now they're more cautious. They want to wait longer to make sure they're serious. Or maybe, in a specific case, they're waiting for the disciple, because they don't think the disciple's ready. There are some gurus that don't have a lot of disciples and don't want a lot of disciples, since they're very cautious about who they'll initiate. It's another reason. In ISKCON, the post of live Siksha Guru is neither acknowledged nor stressed. Only Diksha Gurus are recognized. Is that pleasing to Krishna? I mean, live Siksha Gurus. Because Prabhupada was all we knew as Guru, we didn't really understand Siksha Guru because he was the Guru, and the Guru was the Diksha Guru, and everything, when Prabhupada says Guru, we always thought Diksha Guru, but he didn't mean just Diksha Guru, but that's what we thought. And so, very intimate relationships were developed between disciples and their Diksha Gurus. But many people were serving as Siksha Gurus. Especially right after Prabhupada left, because most of the devotees were Prabhupada's disciples. So, most of them, were godbrothers of the Guru, and Siksha Gurus for the godbrothers' disciples. But at that time we thought that godbrother who's a Guru should be exalted above everyone else. That was a big mistake. So it minimized the position of other devotees. And it's kind of funny, because it was almost like we were in denial of what was really happening. Because what was really happening is so much of the advancement of devotees was coming through the association of other people, not the Guru, or in combination with the Guru and other people. but wasn't really acknowledged. So I'm finding it's being acknowledged a little bit more now, especially because a lot of gurus have so many disciples that they can't personally deal with, and people are looking for personal relationships, and so they feel a deep connection with a person who's taking time to take care of them. But I would say, as an older devotee, we should just take the position of Siksha Gurus, whether we recognize it or not. And if a close relationship develops with another devotee, which is like a disciple, then I think it's good to let them know that, say, I feel you're like a Siksha disciple. I feel responsible for you. I want to make sure that you become Krishna conscious. I think it's good to say that. I think it's really good to say that, because maybe they don't know that. Maybe they don't feel it the way you do. So then you can kind of establish it without any official, others may not recognize it, but you recognize it, and you can declare it, so to speak, that this is what I think, this is what I see it is. And I do that with lots of devotees. I say, I'm just, whatever you need me, I'm there. I'll help you. And that's what a guru does. So it's not a question of I'm their guru, their Diksha guru. It's just I'm somebody who's willing to help them. That's what Prabhupada wants us to do. And let the relationships develop that way. And then just let people know that this is a real relationship. And we can continue this way if they want. And then gradually they'll understand the value of it. And say, so this is what it means to have a Siksha Guru or a Siksha disciple. And I think that's probably where the reality really is. When you get into Diksha, then sometimes people get a little enamored by it or confused by it. But when it's genuine, the genuine part is the Siksha. And that's why it's nice when it's a genuine relationship, not just kind of official. At least that's my experience. Are there plans for me to come to New Jersey? I'm supposed to come the weekend of July 20th to do Japa Workshop Level 2. Is that confirmed, Pallavi? Or if it's not, please confirm. Monikant says it's because of Mercury is going retrograde after 2 days. Why? My picture's getting cloudy? Confirmed. Oh, it's confirmed. Everyone who wants to come to a Japa workshop level 2, you can come even if you haven't come to number 1. You can come to New Jersey the July 20th weekend in Tuwako. Oh, cool. Yeah, all right. Fantastic. Stupendous. Super. Okay. I'm ready to go to sleep. Being overworked and underpaid. Well, actually I'm paid in mercy, so I'm overpaid. And then I should say I'm underworked and overpaid. That's really, you want to hear a funny story. Prabhupada, 1 in the morning, he calls a servant and he says, bring so-and-so. So he wakes up so-and-so. And Prabhupada said, what are you doing? You would think Prabhupada would know, and he wouldn't have to ask the question, what are you doing? But he was making a point. What are you doing? He said, I'm sleeping, Prabhupada. Kind of like, of course I was sleeping. And Prabhupada said, why are you sleeping? Well, Prabhupada, I'm tired. It's 1 o'clock. He said, I am up writing books. Why aren't you up writing books? Well, Prabhupada, you're a pure devotee and I'm not. Why are you not a pure devotee? So, we can't say we're overworked. We always have to say we're underworked and overpaid. Okay? So, thank you for coming.